What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Palantir. It's been a while since I've done a Palantir video, so I want to go over some of the data points, the latest and updates, and where I see things going from here. Before we get into any of that, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Palantir went down 0.28%, largely just piggybacking off the broader markets, fear associated to tariffs, but nonetheless, Palantir did do fairly well given the circumstances. This upcoming week, though, we do have a lot of big data that could really push the broader market and Palantir to the next level. So just to give you a quick summary of that, on Tuesday we have CPI, so that in among itself is going to be a pretty big deal. And then you do have a lot of Fed speakers throughout the week, so that as well could cause some volatility, and most likely a hot topic for them will be tariffs. But Wednesday, we do have PPI and also manufacturing data. And then moving on to Thursday, the typical stuff, so initial jobless claims and whatever else. Also have retail sales, and then capping off the week on Friday, permits, starts, and also Michigan consumer sentiment. So all the data points have shown in the past that it can move the market. So potentially really pushing Palantir to the next leg up. As far as latest updates from Palantir, there hasn't been all that much. Of course, they've put out random PRs here and there, but then again, I think a lot of those aren't really crazy catalysts that you need to stop what you're doing. So most likely their next big thing is going to be their earnings, and that is slated for, it looks like, August the 4th. I don't know if they have officially announced it. I don't believe they have yet, but nonetheless though, I think that one will be the next big deal for Palantir. They have actually done quite a few Form 4s and 144s lately. So a lot of insiders regrettably have been selling. But luckily enough, I think Palantir, just people don't really care about that when it comes down to Palantir. You can kind of see just massive, ever since 2021, there's been a lot of exercising and granting of shares, but nobody's actually purchased using their own money, a lot of selling. So just generally, you can kind of see based on the buys versus the sell premiums, it's very, very one-sided. But again, maybe back here people really cared about it, but like 2021, 2022, but lately people are just too hypnotized by just the massive amount of growth. So again, that's something that could potentially impact Palantir down the line. And just on a side note, the recent ones are transaction code S, so it is straight up sells, not for tax purposes. That is transaction code F. So again, something to somewhat keep in mind. Aside from all that fun stuff though, looking at shorts, still shorts have PTSD, and this is something I've brought up in the past as a good indicator, but 2.3% of the free floats being shorted works out to be 50.15 million shares. And the amount of shares, dollar value, that are shorting Palantir is larger than many stocks' actual market cap. So right now there's $7.16 billion of shorts in Palantir. So crazy stuff. But as I've really pointed out in the past, every time shorts really thought it was like a sure thing, started to double down, they get screwed. And so I think just at this stage in the game, nobody is really willing to bet against Palantir, which at the same time is keeping Palantir at higher levels. And as you can kind of tell from my thumbnail, I think just Wall Street is starting to accept Palantir for what it truly is, which is a kind of a weird circumstance. So a lot of the bears and trolls of Wall Street have really oriented themselves towards other speculative stocks and left Palantir alone. I haven't really seen that much negativity towards them. Even some of the latest analyst ratings, you did have Daniel Ives, who does have a 51% success rating, so not all that great, but then again, he kind of does cover a lot of speculative stocks in nature, so you're going to have some misses, unfortunately, but price target of $160, so that is officially the highest rating for Palantir. Aside from that, you did have Mark, who has a 59% success rating, $155 price target, buy, and they're with Loop. So at the end of the day, like I said, analysts and Wall Street are just starting to become more and more bullish on Palantir. But this upcoming earnings could be a pretty big deal. Again, either reconfirming what Wall Street does really see in Palantir or start to really break down that momentum. So that's going to be a big deal. But Aside from that, looking at the options, 179 million was done on Friday from calls, 62 million in puts, 49% of all the options being done were bearish in nature. And even essentially, if that bearishness was just piggybacking off the broader market, Palantir always does outperform just the market in bear and in bull kind of cases. So I think it's kind of a win-win in my opinion. Even when it was at the $78 range, when it oddly pulled back to that price point, I did many videos during that time frame just pretty much saying, hey, Palantir is a screaming buy. It's a win-win. Even essentially market goes into kind of Armageddon, Palantir is being now at that time was being seen as a defensive stock. So I think Palantir is there's going to be kind of documentaries on Palantir in the foreseeable future, just on how psychological this whole ride has been. Based on this though, going into this upcoming week, you see the bulls anticipating for it to be roughly around that 150. And then the bears are anticipating for it to kind of pull back to, let's say, it looks like that 140 to 142. So given where we did close, there's a lot more upside anticipated. One thing that I've been really watching for across the board is stocks, and because it's one thing just to look at the overall volume. So for instance, on Friday there was 52 million shares being traded, 83 is the average. Of that 52, or in other stocks' cases, just the volume, I like to look at institutions actually trading it, whether it be bullish or bearish, and they're kind of buying or selling, but institutions actually engaging in the stock. That's what I like to look at. I don't like stocks that get artificially pumped up through like algorithmic trading, for instance. So Palantir has consistently, since I've been covering them, and that's been on and off for like a year and a half, they have been getting like massive amounts of institutional transactions. So big money legitimately does pay attention to it. So almost on a daily basis, you're getting roughly between 600 and 700 transactions, each of which are over $100,000. So big money definitely still does love Palantir. So 7.5 million, 1.8, those are just common ones. Just even seeing all of this was all done after hours on Friday, which normally is quiet, but 12.6, 1.3, and that's not even counting the dark pool transactions, which is right here. So you see a lot of crazy transactions, 3.2, 4.6. So yeah, big money definitely is loading the boat behind the scenes, and this is normal now. So seeing a $7-8 million transaction is just like, okay, shrugging your shoulders. Whereas almost like a year ago, that would have been like a big deal, that some institution must know something. So yeah, it's a crazy, like I said, a crazy psychological ride. With it though, at 142, it is trading right now between this R1 and the pivot. So 134 is going to be a strong support, so just watch for that. And then 145 followed by 152 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. So with a lot of this big data coming out this week, and on a side note, a lot of the inflationary data recently has been very bullish. So when it comes down to it though, that could be a very good reason for Palantir to easily get above that 145, and then with it trading between this R2 and this R1, easily hitting a 52-week and all-time high of 152. So in my opinion, I do feel by the end of the week, it will be closing between this R2 and this R1, but still, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg on what is going to be potentially happening. Aside from everything else that I did bring up, there hasn't really been any speculative kind of things in nature to kind of mention. On the actual chart itself, there's not really much negatives to bring up. It is above all the key pivotal moving averages that I like to look at. Stochastic RSI is rather neutral. So because of the recent volatility that caused it to get to roughly around that 130, that did reset it. So it was overbought, went oversold. So right now it's kind of neutral. So that's kind of a good thing. Again, with a lot of good data this upcoming week, that could justify a further push higher, new 52-week all-time highs. So let me know your thoughts on Palantir. What's your viewpoint on my prediction on where it might be going? For those of you that have watched my Palantir videos in the past, I know I'm not the most popular individual, but I think in reality, if you take away all the BS and look at the true data, this is where you can actually and realistically see where things are going. And again, for those of you that have watched my channel, you would know that even well before Daniel Ives was saying 95 was his price target, before he said 120, before 140, I was there saying, hey, you know what, this is going to 120. Daniel Ives, I think at his target at the time was like 85 or something like that. So this is why follow the data. It is signaling that it is going to continue to move higher. And yeah, that's a pretty good thing. So let me know your general thoughts on Palantir. Where do you see things going in the foreseeable future? Do you think that it is going to pull back? One thing to take note of, though, is based on the quantitative data, the only thing that is somewhat not good is just the valuation, and that honestly is, I think, the only bear's argument out there. Not the growth, not anything else, it's just the valuation, which is right now a F. Growth is an A, profitability A, momentum A plus, which kind of makes sense, and revisions is a B. So a little bit slower from the last 3 months, which was an A. So let me know your thoughts on Palantir. Are you buying? Are you selling? What's your general thoughts? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I do give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.